Set. Good evening. Welcome to the July 17th Board of Selectmen meeting, although it does say June 17th on our agenda here. We'll pass by that. I'm John Martin, Jim Labrie to my left, Rini Groden, and Charlie Knickie to my right. We're being recorded live. We're being recorded, and we're also broadcast live. If you join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm going to wait a second till the folks get in there. In case you haven't noticed, the Red Sox are ahead by 4.5 games going into mid. I'm not sure. Okay, we have one appointment, actually a reappointment for the Capital Improvement Committee for Roger Ball Jr. His new term would expire June 30th, 2021. So we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve his reappointment to the Capital Committee.
Have a second? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to skip a little out of order so we can take short business before we have the public hearing. We're going to go to reports. Selectmen, do we have any reports? Charlie, do you have any reports? Yeah. Rini?
No.
We'll do the open space later, Jim.
Well, conservation, there was a new associate member appointed last night to help with trail maintenance, and a lot of the other business, I think, will be here, unless Marla, not thinking of anything from last night. There was a discussion about the barn, that sort of thing, but we don't need to go into that right now.
Jim?
No, nothing.
Okay. Where's Ed? Ed, you want to go through your couple items for the TA report?
Yes, I do have a couple of items. First of all, Select Board meeting for July 24th. I'll just remind the board that that is a short meeting due to the town caucus. And I just wanted to refresh my memory because you were discussing the time that that was going to start when I was called out of the room and had to check on it on something else. So I believe we were going to start that at 5:30, I believe, because we'll have to vacate the room by 6:45.
This room?
Yes. Town caucus.
Very nice.
I had 5 in my book, but I could do either. I mean, if it's not much business.
Well, we actually did have a good amount of business being on there, and then there were a couple of requests for items that came in today, so.
Want to do 5 o'clock?
So 5 o'clock? I just want to know the correct time to post that for, so.
Good
Great.
with everybody?
I am on vacation next week, so.
Good with you?
It's good with me.
That's good. Okay, I'm going to jump down.
And then I've got
You have something
one,
else?
yes,
I'm
one
sorry,
other
go
item. As a follow-up to the previous Select Board meeting, was it the intention of the Select Board to have KP Law perform the title work for 111 Glendale Road property, or to also use the local attorney for that work? I have been told that this should be done prior to the 120-day time limit on the right of first refusal expiring, so we will need to move forward on that, so I'll just need some direction.
And I don't think that was discussed at the open space committee, so what's your thoughts here?
I think that we decided that we were going to wait until after the town meeting, and I did email Attorney Evans to let him know that. So are you saying that that title work should be done since the board approved using Attorney Evans, that he should be the one to do it? Is there time to do it between the 26th and the 12th of August?
I think the sooner we start on it, the better.
Okay.
Yeah,
And we
wherever
have-
we go with, we should let
Yeah.
them know what's coming. So if we go with the local attorney, we should let them know that as soon as the meeting or town meeting approves it, he should be ready to go and do the
Okay.
title work and have it ready by this date. Or if we go with KP Law, they would do the same thing.
Okay, then I think we'd have to have authorization from this board as far as what attorney to use, because as of right now, I believe we're holding off on the attorney as part of the package for 111 based on what the town decides.
All right, correct, and that's why I had put it on the
Okay.
agenda.
All right.
So, I mean, is there any reason not to go with KP Law for the title, since it's pretty cut and dry?
I mean, she wrote the she reviewed the articles for the
Right.
warrant, so if that's more consistent with the time frame, then I'm fine with that. I'll
Second.
second it.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Anything else, Ed?
No, not of importance. Thank you.
Okay, I see we're filling in with chairs here, that's a good sign. I'm going to jump quickly to new business because it's not listed anywhere else. So it's any other necessary business that can't await the July 24th regular select board meeting. We have a one-day alcohol event request for July 20th from Janice Jacques from 3 p.m. to dusk at Conant Park. Everything is here except the park permit, which is in the process of being sent to Ed in the town hall. It's a special situation, so we brought it up. We'd like to get it approved tonight, pending getting the park permit.
I move that we authorize Ed as the town administrator to sign off on this as long as all paperwork's in order.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So all of this is all set, Ed?
Except
The
for the
only
park
thing
permit.
is, the Parks had mailed her the permit, which she hasn't gotten the mail yet, so I would ask the board to do this conditionally on, she gets the permit, brings it to me, and I give her the
And you
one-day
read
alcohol permit.
Oh, that's what he actually
Oh,
said,
okay.
pending all the paperwork.
Okay, because I haven't had a chance to look at it, so if it's all set, then yeah.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I see nothing else except for the public hearing. Why don't we go and sign that, and we'll wait. While you're doing that, I'm going to read the public hearing notice. Okay, Town of Southampton Selectboard, public hearing notice. In accordance with the provisions of General Law, Chapter 61, Section 8, the Southampton Selectboard will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, July 17, 2018, at 6:05 p.m. in first floor meeting room at the Southampton Town Hall, 210 College Highway, Southampton, Massachusetts, regarding the proposal to exercise the town's right of first refusal to purchase a parcel of land located at 111 Glendale Road, Southampton, Massachusetts, described in a deed recorded with the Hampshire Registry of Deeds, Book 9321, page 128, containing approximately 84.75 acres, and identified as Assessor's Map 7, Lot 5 of the property. The property is owned by Denise Wayne, Christopher J. Wayne, and David S. Wayne, the owners. The Select Board will consider whether the town will exercise the town's right of first refusal pursuant to General Law, Chapter 61, Section 18, to purchase the property and appropriate the funds necessary to acquire the property. The notice of intent to sell and accompanying documents submitted to the town by the owners may be reviewed in the town clerk's office located in the Southampton Town Hall during the hours of 8:30 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Thursday, excepting holidays. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on the matter may appear at the public hearing at the time and place designated. John Martin, Chairman, Board of Selectmen, Town of Southampton. Okay, so that officially opens the public hearing. And let me sign this. So just to clarify something before we go, the Open Space Committee has posted a public meeting for today at 6 o'clock in this room. So they're present here also so that they can participate fully with the Select Board on this. We don't want to violate any open meeting laws, so we posted both meetings together. And if the committee doesn't mind, I'm going to introduce the committee just so people know who they are. We have Cindy Palmer, Janet Brown, who's representing the, where's Janet? CPC, Barbara, Pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. Planning Board. Janet Brown, CPC, Barb LaFlamme, Diana Fetterman, Janet Kane, representing the assessors, Marla Hank, Conservation Commission, and Rini and myself. And we have Mark Wamsley here from the Kestrel Land Trust to help us out. Okay, so Rini, you want to take over and do the presentation?
So hi, everybody. Thanks very much for coming. John asked me to put together a PowerPoint for informational purposes. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to just review the PowerPoint. It will be uploaded on the website through Easthampton Media. And then afterwards, if people have questions, we'll have lots of time for questions. People in the room here are going to be much better able to answer some of the questions you may have. So all of this information is information that I've taken from existing documents. So let me just get...
Is there a way that you can just use your center up there and get rid of all the... There you go.
So this concerns the right of first refusal, 111 Glendale Road. And these photos were taken by Diana Fetterman and myself. So just a little background, Chapter 61 lands. The citizens of Massachusetts authorized 3 programs which require cities and towns to reduce assessments of farm, forest, and open space, provided the owners make a commitment to keep their land in one or more of these uses. These programs were motivated in large part by rising property values, which were forcing farmers and forest landowners to sell their land because of the increasing tax burden. So there are 3 tax reduction programs. The first is 61, the Forest Land Act. The second is Chapter 61A, the Farmland Assessment Act. And the third is Chapter 61B, which is the Recreational Land Act. So the right of first refusal, the owner of a land commits a property to agricultural, forest, or recreational use. In exchange, the city or town reduces the taxes and is granted the right to purchase the property if and when it's removed from Chapter 61, 61A, or B classification to be converted or sold for residential, commercial, or industrial use. This proper notice triggers a 120-day option period during which the city or town has the right of first refusal to meet a bona fide offer to purchase the land. So this is a map of the actual land on 111 Glendale Road, and I don't know if I can actually... So right here is 111 Glendale. This street here is Glendale Road. Up here is the vineyard. The cross streets right around 111 are Edward Ave and Miller Ave. So this is the parcel of land that we're talking about. So it's 84.75 acres. It's Chapter 61 land, which is forest land. The appraised value is $720,000. On April 10th, Southampton Selectboard received a notice of the intent to convert the use of the land currently under Chapter 61 to residential use by subdividing the same, upon which single-family homes and potentially a duplex are to be constructed. So this notice triggers a 120-day option period during which Southampton has the right of first refusal to meet a bona fide offer to purchase the land, which was $720,000. The 120-day period ends August 12, 2018. So we have 2 documents in town. One of them is the Southampton Master Plan. It was put together by a large number of very committed people to interview the town, representatives from lots of different committees to identify the priorities of the Southampton residents. So this comes specifically from page 61 of the master plan, which if you go to the website underneath boards and committees, and you go to the master plan committee, you will find a copy of the master plan. It's a very large document. It's extremely informative. The preservation and stewardship of open space and natural resources are among the most important elements of the community vision expressed by residents. Residents said they appreciate the town's clean air and water, as well as its abundant woods, wildlife, streams, conservation areas, trails, and opportunities for outdoor activities. When asked to name their concerns about the future, many residents said new residential development and the loss of active farms are among the greatest threats to Southampton's current character. Additional concerns cited were the protection of wildlife, aquifers, and other natural resources. Another document that's listed on the website is the Open Space and Recreation Plan. And on page 35, it says, most residents moved to or remained in Southampton because of its rural character. Residents want the town to be more proactive in acquiring private properties to preserve open space, agricultural land, and scenic vistas. This is the conservation map of Southampton, and there are more copies here if anybody would like to have a copy of it. The areas in green are the conservation areas. That large area on the left is the Ty-Carmody Reservoir. That is not open to the public. That is managed and accessible to Holyoke, which is who uses it for water. So that is not at all available to Southampton. So I know that 600 and something acres is always mentioned as far as the amount of conservation acres that we have. The acreage in Southampton is 18,526, which is actually, the conservation areas are 3-something%, which doesn't sound like a lot. But those are the conservation areas, and ideally, again, people in the room can speak to this better. You would ideally want to have more contiguous conservation areas, which is why there was a particular interest in the Fulmer Road property because it's contiguous to other conservation area. But anyway, there's the open space, and there's a copy for anybody who would like to have it right there. So 111 Glendale Road is identified as an open space protection area on the town's master plan. It has scenic forests. It's a wildlife habitat. There are trails for hiking, horseback riding, and other recreation. It's a recharge district for the Glendale Well and a Zone 2 protection area for the Barnes Aquifer. This property, so the red circled is the land, is the 84.75 acres on Glendale Road. And this is a map thanks to Kestrel Land Trust. This property lies within the state's Biomap 2 Wildlife Conservation Assessment for core habitat and critical natural landscapes. It's a wildlife corridor from the Pomeroy Mountain to the Manhan River. And that's that green thinner line that goes along this bottom edge of the property. So the right of first refusal, the Open Space Review Committee formed in May of 2018, and John just introduced the members that are here. The goals, initially, the short-term goal was to develop a strategy to secure funding for the purchase of 111 Glendale Road. The longer-term goal is to get ahead of some of the land in town and to do smart growth, to refer to the master plan and the Open Space Review Committee, and to really identify land in town that actually is consistent to acquire and develop a relationship potentially with landowners, as opposed to being in this tight time crunch of a 120-day and right of first refusal situation. So we have letters of support from the water commissioners in town, the planning board, the Board of Assessors, the Conservation Commission, and we just got a letter from the Massachusetts Historical Commission saying that there are architectural reasons why they don't believe this land should be disrupted. There was a vote to approve these articles for town meeting by the Select Board and the Community Preservation Committee. So proposed funding, there's a grant land acquisitions for natural diversity grant program. It was submitted, thanks very much to Mark Wamsley here in the room from Kestrel, and Diana Fetterman, who's from the Open Space Review Committee, who got that grant out the door on the 12th of July, and also community preservation account. So the community preservation, just in case you don't know, is Massachusetts state law. It enables adopting communities, and Southampton voted to adopt the Community Preservation Act to raise funds to create a local dedicated fund for open space and recreation, historic preservation, community affordable housing, an undesignated account, and also administrative expenses, which is a very small amount. Again, Virginia Ahart would be able to speak to this if there are questions about this. Funds are raised locally through a voter-authorized surcharge on local property tax bills. Due to statute, funds can only be spent on the above categories. So for the town meeting, the Article 1 says, do you support purchasing this land? Now, these numbers were generated through the Community Preservation Committee at the last meeting. So we may or may not have to be more discussion about that. But Article 1 will propose that or suggest that we get the grant. And we've been told that we have a very good possibility of getting the grant. The grant award would be up to $400,000. And then community preservation, there is currently $93,000 open space and recreation, at least that amount, and then $292 in undesignated. So this grant would be awarded in December. The payout would be in early 2019, and it's after the deadline to purchase. So therefore, this article asks the voters to also authorize short-term borrowing. But there may be some creative short-term borrowing that would not involve interest. But nonetheless, we have to say that it could involve short-term borrowing, and so that's the hope that would get the grant, and the rest would come from existing funds in community preservation. Article 2 says, do you support purchasing this land? And this says, if we don't get the grant, do you support purchasing the land anyways? So this, again, would be community preservation in the same numbers in those various accounts, and then community preservation for the $400 to make up the difference if we don't get the grant, and that would be borrowing against future community preservation funds, which is allowed. In the event we don't secure this grant, this purchase would be funded with 100% community preservation funds. So just so people know, the seller's attorney and the real estate broker have indicated that the seller might be willing to discuss an extended payment plan which might reduce the amount of money needed to borrow from future community preservation. In order for this to be considered, they are asking voters to approve both articles, which establishes a commitment to buy the land even if the town does not get the grant. So that is an important thing to know. And that's all I have. So at this time, if people have any questions.
I think Barb's going to put the lights on.
Cindy Palmer, 71 Glendale Road, and I'm also a member of the Open Space Committee. So I just want to reference some of the handouts that you were handed, just so you know. Information on the back of the one with the picture hopefully can help, and summarizes a good deal of what is in this PowerPoint presentation. And also, there is one reference to the cost of residential development to the taxation of people in the town of residential taxes, and the findings that say basically residential development can result in increase in municipal costs, especially in the long run. I did speak with the city planner in Northampton, and they found the same thing. In their urban areas, it was fine. In the more suburban, rural areas, they found that municipal costs were higher than their tax dollars that they received. And I have copies of that study, and I also have copies of the letter that was referenced in this PowerPoint presentation from the Mass Historical Commission regarding the archaeological interest in this site. So please see me if you want any of those pieces of information. Thanks.
I'm going to. I'm trying to listen. No, I don't want to lose what I did, so thanks.
I was going to ask, but
Yeah, thank you.
Cheryl Fletcher, Gun Road. So I also wanted to comment that just today we received a letter of support for the land grant from Don Hummerson, from our state senator, who has been very supportive of the first right of refusal being exercised. So, and if anyone wants to have copies of that, we have this.
Mark, would you mind going up and explaining the grant funding process with your experience, of getting these grants, like last year, how many were applied for, how many actually came through? Some background like that for the folks?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Mark Walmsley from Kestrel Land Trust. I live in Florence, Mass. I helped the town, along with a lot of citizens who put in a lot of hard work, submit an application for the state DCS land grant, and again, land stands for Local Acquisitions for Natural Diversity. We just got that grant application in last week. we can go back and forth about what information you think could be most important for that. The general timeline for that is that we will most likely hear by sometime in December of this year whether we receive the grant. Between now and then, representatives from the state will come out and tour the property and meet with town officials and other interested people to kind of just see if what we put in the grant application, how it actually works out on the land. So once the grant is awarded, hopefully that it is awarded, there'll be a period of time where someone from the town will have to go to a grant workshop on administering the grant, and then the town will have to sign a contract with the state for the grant money. And that's very important because the town cannot purchase anything that it hopes to get reimbursed by the grant until that contract is signed with the state. I tried to pin down the state on whether, when that contract could be signed. They weren't willing to commit to a date. It will be in the spring, late winter, or in the spring.
If I can just jump in and clarify. Sure. What he's saying is basically the town can't hold a deed to that property before we get the grant, because once we have the deed, the grant wouldn't apply anymore. So we've got to kind of put our ducks in order, if you will, to get to 120 days to 90 days, work with the sellers, get the grant, then pay. That's why there's a couple articles up here with different funding scenarios.
Yeah,
And that's why the sellers had said that they'd be willing to discuss a payment plan, because even though the time frame, the 90 days may precede the grant notification, they said that if the town votes that they're interested in purchasing this land, then they would work with the town so that we wouldn't hold title to the property until the grant was actually awarded.
There's some, you're right pointing out, there's some very complicated timelines involved. I mean, there's a strict timeline for state funding, and then Chapter 61 has its own timeline, and making the two meet requires some flexibility, so it's really wonderful that the landowner is possibly willing to work with the town on that front. So just assuming that, the grant award is given to the town, for the next fiscal year, the town would have to close by June 30th of 2019. And there is a point in the grant application where they asked whether it could be pushed on to next fiscal year. I said no, it would have to happen in this coming fiscal year. And again, just to clarify.
Fiscal year right now.
What was that?
Fiscal 19 or right now?
Yeah, fiscal year right now, so the state's fiscal year, which began July 1st. I guess the other important thing to point out is that the land grant is a reimbursement grant. That's great for, I'm sure you know that, but for all the town residents to know. So basically the town has to make the purchase and show their receipts and various other requirements for the grant. And then it takes from 2 weeks to 45 days to get the check back from the state for the reimbursement amount. We applied for the maximum allowed for the land grant, which was $400,000, which worked out perfectly for this parcel. There was no problem there, and we're hopeful. Again, you asked what the chance of success is.
Based on past performance. Yeah,
I mean, it's certainly hard to handicap. I think around 2/3 of the applicants actually do end up being successful. From my past experience, I think this is a strong project in a number of ways. I think it's very compelling. The land is very compelling. The size, the acreage alone, that's one of the ranking criteria. That's where Western Mass actually competes pretty well with Eastern Mass. We actually have some bigger parcels of land that stand up pretty well for ranking. I think it maps very well. One of the maps that we showed with Biomap I thought was very compelling. And the fact that a lot of citizens are behind it and they know about the property, a lot of people already use it. So I think the town stands a good chance from my perspective.
Does anybody have any questions for Mark or about this process or the Kestrel Fund?
I'm just wondering if, I don't want to put you on the spot, Charlotte, but I just didn't know if you wanted to say a word or two about the biomap.
Sure. I actually noticed that you had the biomap handbook with you as well.
I do. Do you want to grab it? Or
There's copies for everybody.
Just wonder if I'd find.
Oh, there's a map. I actually have the full biomap.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charlotte Axelm.
We have to go to the podium.
Introduce yourself. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Charlotte Axelm. I'm a member of the Conservation Commission, and I'm, a student in environmental conservation, studying wetland hydrology.
I'm going to interrupt you because the microphone's there and they won't hear you.
Okay. I study wetland hydrology, and I have some experience with GIS, specifically using the biomap created by Fish and Wildlife and NHESP. Is that correct?
Yeah, and Nature Conservancy, yes.
And Nature Conservancy, yes. So what the biomap shows for this specific property is that it's a part of, or the parcel is contained within 2 different zones that the biomap references, critical natural landscape and core habitat. It's in core habitat 1666 and critical natural landscape block 850, or it might be reversed. And what that means basically is that it's critical for clean drinking water preservation, carbon sequestration, because of how forested it is, both of which are priorities for the townspeople as indicated in the master plan and the open space and recreation plan. And it's also a habitat for a number of species of conservation concern listed by the state and some other state wildlife action plan species. So the parcel is significant for a number of reasons as indicated by the biomap. And yeah, is that sufficient explanation?
Any questions? We're probably saying, okay. Thank you very much. Anybody else like to ask a question or make a statement?
Tammy Walunas, 298 College Highway. My question is for Mark. With the town already have receiving a land grant within the last 3 years, I think it is, does that hinder this land grant? Because I know on the application it asks if you've received one already in your town recently.
Have you received a land grant for, oh, sorry.
Just so people at home can hear you.
I don't think it would significantly affect it. Do you know what, did the town receive a land grant recently? The Cook Road parcel ultimately didn't receive a land grant. It received the Drinking Water Supply Protection Grant. That was the only one I was aware of. I don't know. The Greenway was
awarded but never used it. And
yeah.
That was returned.
But it's way past its dates now. Yeah. It's no longer available.
That's gone.
So I haven't gotten any indication that that will negatively affect it.
Anybody else have any questions, thoughts, concerns? Come on up. I got a feeling we're blocking you in the middle, so you may have to go around. Can you make it?
Hi, my name is Brian Diamond. I live at 110 Brickyard Road. My question's about, I have 2 questions, and they're both about money, everybody's favorite topic. I'm curious as to what the balances are, the current balances are in our various CPA accounts. And the second one is, if we do end up borrowing against future CPA revenues, what would be the impact on our future CPA revenue and their availability for future projects?
Both good questions. We have the answers for you. By the
Great.
way, I like your T-shirt.
Thank you.
Virginia or Jim, one of you want to?
Virginia Ahart, Chair of Community Preservation Committee. Right now, the money that we would be taking out would deplete, pretty much deplete the open space line. But it would still leave more than $100,000 in the undesignated. Now, borrowing, I mean, if we get the grant, the $400,000 would come back and would go into those lines. So that would be replenished. If we don't, we can borrow against future, and by the way, the amount that we would be borrowing is small compared to what some communities have done. I know of one who wanted open space and borrowed over $1 million against their CPA funds. It does happen. We would have to, of course, allocate funds in those areas that you see listed on that one handout. And then we would pay from the open space and perhaps some from the undesignated. Undesignated can only go to those 3 areas. It cannot be used for just anything. So,
Can I ask you a question? My understanding from the accounts for the community preservation, the different categories I put up there, that open space and recreation, affordable or community housing, and historical preservation, they all, each year, when we get the money into the account, it's about 10% of the total amount, and then a small amount is for administrative or committee expenses. 65% of the money coming in goes to the undesignated account, which the Community Preservation Committee has the ability to, approve and then send to the voters. So in the beginning, the state matched the community preservation amounts that the towns gave, but now recently, we got in pretty early, now recently some big cities, Springfield, Boston, have now joined, and so the state, which typically happens, doesn't quite match what they originally did. So there's a little concern about the matching piece of it. But up till now, or recently, it's been 100% match of Southampton funds.
well, last year it had dropped. It's been dropping even before, because the designated collections, which come from deeds, had been going down, and more smaller cities and towns were coming in. So last year, we only got about 57%. If the state does not put in, and they've been putting in money from their surplus at the end of the year, if they do not, we can only hope for about 37%, which is very low. Now, we stay in as many rounds as possible because we're at 3%, and so that ups the number of rounds that we can stay in. So we will get the maximum percentage based on that. The last I knew, 2 things were going on. There was a proposal to raise the amount of the fee on deeds. That had gotten stymied. The Senate had passed it, but the House had not dealt with it. So we don't know where that is. The other thing is that in this year's budget surplus, and that 37 is based on the fact that no budget surplus would be put in. However, if you're paying attention to budget process at the state right now, you know that there is a committee working on the 2 budgets. Yeah. And again, money for community preservation, and I can't tell you which one. It's in one of them and not in the other. And once they get the budget process, we'll know a little bit better on that amount.
And we just got an email saying that exactly what you just said, that they're basically hoping to put in money to increase regional transportation, which is extremely important to Southampton, up to 80%. It's supposed to be 100%. That's what they promised when they started that. And then also the circuit breaker for special education is also supposed to increase and be 100% funded. And they mentioned community preservation funds. Yeah. So it wouldn't hurt to contact legislators.
Go ahead, Charlie. I'm sorry.
Hi, Virginia.
Hello, Charlie.
You're talking percentages. I need to boil those percentages into dollars. So you're saying best case scenario, Southampton's going to get about 37% of the income in a year?
It's based on what we have put in on our 3%.
So our 3% is how much?
Well, that I didn't bring, but it was just roughly, I would say, over 200.
Yeah, can I go over a few numbers here?
Yeah.
I was going to say, Jim has a summary.
I'm sorry, I didn't bring all mine.
No problem.
I think you gave a great umbrella. Now
That
he's
was-
going to put some numbers to it.
That was great.
Don't go away.
I can go away.
Yeah. I'm on community preservation representing the planning board, and we had a meeting the other night.
Don't go away.
And a lot of numbers were thrown around, and we're talking about if, we always look at it as worst case, if the land grant didn't come in, how would that affect the CPC? So I went and saw the town accountant today, and she gave me a little rundown of what fiscal 19 looks like. Right now, there's $1,115,544 in the account. Of that, we're going to get about $1,000 worth of interest. And then June receipts will add another $3,400 onto that. She's estimating, and this is a guesstimate on all the previous years, and it's down a little bit, but she's saying that we should have in receipts $230,000 to add to that. Of that, the percentage, Charlie, you were thinking, if you can do the math, she said $80,500 from the state is a possibility. Okay, now there's $675 that was voted on for LaBrie Field. And because I'm looking at the undesignated account, we have to take of that money coming in, 93 is going to be moved down to the open space, is what she told me. And then there's another 7,000 for admin. So the total, estimated total fiscal year 19 of undesignated is 655,444. And then at open space, if we get to 93,000, like the money comes in as projected, plus the 31,000, there's $124,818.30. So that brings us just shy of $800,000. So there's quite a bit of money in there, and these are the numbers I got from Vicki. I don't know if you agree with them, Virginia. I can give you a copy.
Yeah, I didn't have the latest. I
Yeah.
was working on taking out the 675
Yeah.
for the LaBrie Field, on what the last figures I had.
So basically, based on those numbers, we could pay off in 1
Yes.
year.
Within 1 year.
Within
Now,
1 year. But
I want to make it clear. I just want to make a statement here that sitting on CPC, a lot of things were said, and we're hearing things about 5 years, going to be out of money, and I was worried about that. I am not against this project. I want to make that clear. I was just worried how it would have affected the community preservation, but after seeing these numbers, I don't think it's nearly as bad. And this is worst case. This is if the land grant doesn't go through. If the land grant goes through, we're going to be great. So just wanted to clear that up for everybody.
Yeah, and go ahead, go up there. I'm talking. One other thing, and Rini brought it up, is that the sellers of the property, the Wayne family, came forward and says they're willing to talk about extending payments. So if we can extend the payment a year, maybe 2 years, depending on negotiations, we'd have the money back in our CPA money would be up probably well over $1 million before we had to pay it off. So it's not a 5-year scenario. It's a good, and I mentioned the Wayne family. I just want to say thank you to them. And I don't know if any of them are here because I truly don't know the children. I grew up near Frank Wayne, who was a great neighbor, but I never met the Wayne children. So if you're watching, thank you very much. And also the Garska family for working with us, because they're both working with us as part of this project. And without them, it would be a lot more complicated.
I just want to mention, that's why I put in the PowerPoint regarding, I'm sorry, Charlie.
That's okay.
I just want to say that I put in the PowerPoint, that's why I said that because of the timing of when we get the grant, when the 90-day, all of that is up, that we might be able to borrow without interest, possibly if it's very short term. And then we might also not have to necessarily borrow against CPC if there's a payment plan established, or we would have a much less amount to need to borrow if they're willing to spread out a payment plan into a year or two.
I'm going to let Charlie just say it before.
Please.
Thank you.
That $800,000 that you came up with based on all this, does that also include the historic allocation and the housing authority allocation? Because those would have to be taken out of that.
No,
She gave me undesignated and open space. Those are the only two I talked about. That's what she says on here, and that's what I got from.
So then the next question is this: if we take and pass Article 2, and we have to take a loan out, are we looking at a 5-year loan, 10-year loan, 2-week loan?
Well, it depends on which scenario we have.
Years.
Yeah. We'd have to discuss that at the time.
Well, 1 to 2 years.
If we did it that way, yeah, or maybe not at all.
So no one's actually set up what the payment plan would be?
No, we want to go to in my opinion, go to town meeting and see what happens. and then go from
Let's say
there.
it passes at town meeting, so
Yeah.
is this, the payment plan coming back to this board?
We have to
I'm
vote,
asking.
we have to vote to authorize the treasurer to go ahead and do a debt exclusion if we go that way.
But who's gonna set up the parameters of the debt exclusion? Is it gonna be the treasurer's office, the selectman's office, a combination, town administrator?
Option D. Treasurer, select board, town administrator.
That's C. D.
So the Wayne family wants to make sure that the town of Southampton wants to purchase this land regardless of the grant. So if Article 1 and 2 pass, which both have to happen for them to feel like this town wants to purchase this land, if that happens, then there will be a discussion about a payment plan. They're not going to say, well, we'll allow you to spread it out over 3 years. They're not saying any of that. They want to wait to make sure that the town wants this land. Then they'll discuss it. That's why they're saying they may be willing to delay timeline to make it work for this town.
I disagree. The way you're saying this, the town's gonna borrow the money, pay to the Wayne family, and then the town has to negotiate with the bank
No,
to
no.
take and settle the amount of money they're gonna pay per year.
Now, what could happen is, again, scenarios, and we're going out of it, but I'll just finish it with, we could get the money from CPC, pay that to the Wayne family, and the second payment could be due down the road. We may have to short-term borrow until we find out if we get the grant or not, or take it from CPC.
Charlie, if I understand this right, the Wayne family said if the town meeting votes to do this, that's a firm commitment, the town's obligated at that point. They're comfortable with taking the initial down payment of, what is it, the
$36,000.
$36,000, so they retain that if we, back out. But they're also gonna get the CPC money that was approved the other day, which is 372, was it? I forget. 385. So they get that payment out, so there's no loan yet. That money comes from CPC. The balance, possible, they would take, they would put a lien on the property and then give us time to come up with the balance. So we may not have to borrow that 400. So we'd have to, negotiate at what rate they would do that, and they indicated maybe, at 0, they indicated that. So we're not sure yet, and there's nothing in writing.
And we don't want to put words in their mouth.
A couple of quick questions. Because we now have a letter from the Commonwealth Historical Commission, does that open the door for us to use community preservation money in the historic category?
Virginia?
That's
See,
Virginia.
I think what they said in the letter,
Virginia's shaking her head no. If that's your answer, that's fine, Virginia.
so what they said in the letter, and I don't know if you have a copy of it, they said that there was a sawmill, and there was also some archaeological sensitive areas. Do you have a copy
Adjacent
of the letter?
areas, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Rini, it's in your folder,
Oh,
It's right here.
and it's in the Dropbox.
yeah. But I guess whether it qualifies, I guess, is the question. So maybe Virginia would have.
See, the way I'm reading it, the way the Historic Commission's written this, it says it would be good for us to preserve this land, and I'm looking at CP money as preserving historic.
Well, I would not want to give you a firm answer at this point. What I would do, of course, is go to the Community Preservation Coalition and get their, and they have lawyers, get their ruling on whether it could or not. But they don't have a lot of money. And technically, I would also be very hesitant to use the funds that the historic preservation, because we have got another project out there that could require funds from that line.
I was told not to pay any attention to what might be coming, the community preservation only pays attention to stuff that's in front of them.
Well, we already have something in front of us, a $30,000 that we gave to, or put in the hands of Select Board, and it hasn't really moved forward, but it's beginning to.
My hope is it does.
And, that it's something that really does need to be done also. So if anyone wonders, just take a drive down East Street.
Thank you.
Virginia.
My next question, my final question,
This is what I got from Vicki, so you can just review it.
I don't want to send her back and bring her up.
No,
This
it's
is
yours.
8 Virginia?
no.
Okay. What's your last question?
It's my understanding that Glencroft Farm utilizes this land for horse trails?
What does?
The farm on Glendale Road uses that land for horse trails, riding?
That is correct.
And my question is, if the town purchases this land, are they still gonna be able to utilize this?
I don't,
We
know.
talked about having Bob Fletcher, Gun Road. We talked with the Raymonds about this, and we'd also discussed having a licensing arrangement similar to what I have on the Zipta property, because they're also doing maintenance on the property, or have been, through a word of mouth years ago with Frank. We have talked at great length about this, both. Mark Raymond and myself, if the town was willing to have him designated as a maintenance person in there, and also because of the nature of the riding trails in there, to let this continue. Very similar to on the Zipta property, you open it up to hunters every year, and it's never really been discussed what the scope of what goes on with the hunters over there is. It's always been kind of an open arrangement. And that has been, it has been discussed a number of times that you have hunters in there that you don't know, and you have, it's kind of a gray area, where when I'm in there doing what I do in there, it's a very documented arrangement.
Would be entertaining in licensing for someone to do horseback riding out there?
I'm not sure we'll have an answer for that now, but we'll have a concert.
Ask, I mean, I'm seeing these people advocating hiking and recreation and everything else. I've done horseback riding through that property. It's very nice to go out there on horseback. I need to ask these questions so that in my mind, when I go to vote, I at least have a better understanding of what we're establishing here.
Now, we'll have a conservation restriction on that land through Castro, is that correct?
Yes.
Is there any issues with a conservation restriction on doing recreational activities, such as what we're talking about? Yeah.
I think, I mean, certainly recreational activities are included in conservation restrictions, and each conservation restriction is tailored between the parties involved and to the particular piece of property. Horseback riding can be allowed under a conservation restriction.
It can or cannot?
It can. I think it would be a good thing to talk through with the Conservation Commission about what parameters, particularly with wetland crossings and stream crossings, that's really kind of where, and as well as kind of steep slopes. Those are the two areas where you have some concerns about horseback riding. But being out on the property, yes, I mean, the courses are going through the streams right now, but it's not too steep a property, so I think, you know, a plan could be put together that could be workable.
I guess the question is because the people that are doing it now own a business, which is horseback riding, versus the individuals going on there riding horses. So I guess that would have to be explored also.
The fact that it is a business, yeah.
Right.
And it would be interesting to also know kind of how often that particular property is used by the riders. I know it's used for a big event occasionally, but yeah, it would be good to know kind of where their trail network is.
Right, the Fletchers have a business too, so it, I mean, it wouldn't necessarily preclude that, right?
Yeah, no, it wouldn't. There's some language in there about de minimis recreational use, which would have to kind of, you know, look through.
It was just
But-
the insurance and all that would have to go through, yeah.
Yeah, I think as long as, you know, the person's main concession isn't on the conservation land and they're deriving all their profits from that, I think that's mainly what they're looking for.
And I know when we walked the land, it wasn't real evident that people were riding horses or anything on there. I mean, the trails look pretty clean.
And I think that's the good flip side of it, that you have someone maintaining the trails and interested in maintaining the trails. That's kind of a natural connection to make for the maintenance and stewardship of the property going forward. It's actually a nice arrangement if it could work.
Okay. So I guess the answer is it's allowable and it's possible. We just have to come up with conditions and all that. Any other? Go ahead.
Christina Madsen, Rattle Hill Road. My question was going to be, now that Mass Historic has designated it as an archaeologically sensitive area, would the historic funds be available to it? So that's been answered. I would like to just add that being a member, or having been a member of the Master Plan Committee, there were just a few areas in town, 4 areas that were designated as open space protection areas. Glendale Road is one of them. So there are not a great many areas that are thus designated, and given that this large tract has come up within an open space protection area, it certainly warrants conservation or consideration by the town.
Anybody else would like to speak? Anybody on the board? Any other questions?
Joanne Alderman, 48 High Street. Just a quick question. Now, my understanding is the voting for this would be done on July 26th.
Town meeting?
Is it possible to do an absentee ballot if you're not going to be around? Because I know a lot of people are going to be on vacation. I'm one of them, and I would want to have the ability to vote for this.
Okay. Town moderator is saying, no, I'm not, I don't.
For town meeting.
For town meeting?
Only election.
Robert Floyd, 15 East Street. Absentee ballots are not allowed in town meeting for many reasons. One of them, a motion can be altered. It can be amended. You have to be present. You can't even read a letter from your mother or your husband or your wife. It's your opinion. So no absentee ballots for town meeting. That's state law.
One more time, any other questions, thoughts? Okay, well, thanks to the Ad hoc Open Space Committee. I know you folks have put in a lot of time because Renee and I have been sitting there with you. So thanks for the public involvement. I think that's what got this going in the first place. So that's great to see. It's great to see a good turnout here. Come back on a regular meeting, we'd welcome you. Absolutely.
Just because there's a lot of people here, I just wanted to say that if there are folks that are interested, I know that the conservation budget, was cut a while ago, and this committee does a tremendous amount of work. They meet every 2 weeks. They make site visits, and I know that different people have been signed on recently to help with trail maintenance and things like that. We're also very fortunate in this town that even like in the last 3 months, we've had a tremendous number of people step up to be on committees. Charlotte, who spoke earlier, John next to her is a forester. We have an attorney. I mean, we have like 8 to 12 people that are all in their 20s and 30s that have stepped up to be on PQB, conservation, Council of Aging, running for different select board and other positions in town. So I just want to say that right now that there's a lot of energy between the Open Space Forum with 175 people coming, the newly formed Open Space Committee, a new associate member last night to do trail maintenance. So anyway, if you know people who want to step up and help out, that would be great. I'm just grateful for the new enthusiasm and energy on these committees. And I didn't mention Board of Health. We have a young person with a degree in animal science who is our health agent and animal inspector.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move that the town exercise its right of first refusal on the Glendale Road property.
Is there a second for discussion?
We got to close the public hearing first, I
We
think.
have the vote? Okay. So let's have a motion to close the public hearing.
Well, you have a well, no, we seconded, so, okay. I'll make a motion, we close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so since you weren't seconding, you want to repeat it, your motion?
I move that the town exercise its right of first refusal for the Glendale Road property.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Any last words? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, unanimous. Thank you, everyone. We're going to get back to our regular select board agenda, although there's
Not back to that.
not that much here. We are going to have open time for the public if anybody's interested, so. Remember when I said you could stay for the regular meeting? Really not, huh? Well, this one I got right. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's different. We'll take a 5-minute recess. Okay, we're back from our 5-minute break. Yes, we're going to go to open time for the public. Is any public here that would like to speak?
One public.
No? Nobody that wants to speak for open time for the public? Okay, I'm going to go back to that new business, any other necessary business that can wait till July 24th, regular select board meeting. Is there anything that's come up in the interim that we want to bring up? Have I missed anything on the agenda? Don't think so. Okay.
He's okay.
Okay, so,
We did have some very nice compliments to the police and fire department relative to the
Yes,
power lines.
that was
on
nice.
Pleasant Street.
we did,
I thought it was East Street.
yes. They always do a great job.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
What was that?
2 days ago?
Yeah, that was really nice.
Speaking to somebody about letting me know these things.
They let me know.
Okay, just so we don't,
You should be on the Southampton.
just so we don't digress, is there a motion to adjourn?
I just want to mention,
No?
no. Did you all understand the letter today? I got a call today from a teacher in the school saying that they got some letter that went out and they thought it was a scam letter asking for private information.
Yeah, I
So
saw
anyway,
that.
thank you for responding so quickly and thank Jennifer for responding so quickly. She quickly put out a message to all the staff saying it's legit and this is what it's about. And so that was nice. Thank you. Yep.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second? No discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone, good night.